Today we have a special guest speaker for Medical Device Academy's live streaming video. Her name is Alexina Esposito. She's responsible for marketing at BW & Co. It's a global grant writing company with more than 70 grant writers. They have approximately 60 medical device companies as clients and more than 150 clients overall. Alexina wrote a guest blog on our website. She posted it on our website this Tuesday. The blog is called Grant Writing: 5 Common Mistakes by Medical Device Companies. She's going to teach us a little bit about grant writing and answer questions that customers have sent us. Thank you for joining us, Alexina. Please say hello to our audience and tell us a little bit more about BW & Co.
Yeah, well, firstly, thank you, Rob, for having me on. This is really exciting, and I think there's a lot of synergy between both of our companies and what we can bring to the table. So thank you for the introduction as well. BW & Co., or in long format, Baginski Wegner and Company, we're a full-service grant writing firm originating in Europe, helping European companies win grants there and also helping them win grants in the U.S., and now established in Houston, Texas, focusing on a lot of different R&D grants, but also different local, state, and regional grants as well, too, for various different types of businesses. So we've been around for the last 20 years, helping entrepreneurs secure funding to further their development of their technology and hoping that they change, society one day. So we're just one piece of that puzzle. And we do everything from identifying various different grant opportunities to pairing with our amazing and talented grant writers that we have a part of our team who do the heavy lifting for our clients. That way our clients can focus on their technology and really making that difference in the world, to then helping them submit on their behalf, making sure everything is organized and clean so we're not forgetting any documents, and then waiting to see that our client has been awarded. Some key things that we do a little bit differently than other grant writing firms like us is that we don't only apply for one opportunity. We'll find various opportunities that we see our clients are a good fit for, and then applying to those various opportunities, therefore increasing the chance of success for our clients.
Thank you. To get us started, we have a few questions, but can you tell us one thing about grant writing that you think would be a huge surprise to everybody that's listening?
Yeah, I think one thing that we think about grant writing is that it's writing, right? We need to be experts on the grammar, the writing, making sure everything looks pretty and is laid together in the format that's expected from the different institutions that we might be applying to. But something that I think is kind of shocking to those who are going into the grant writing process is that it's mainly about your strategy when you go into grant writing. And so you have to think about various different things that goes through when you're thinking strategy. So not only the writing aspect itself, but who is your team? What kind of relationships have you built in your past? Who are your specialists in your different areas on your team based on your technology and the product that you are developing? What agency that you're going to be applying for, which is a key part to your strategy. There's different layers that go into it, which I'm assuming we're going to get more into our conversation later. And then also taking into account the success rates of these institutions and how you can strategize yourself better to then increase your likelihood of winning. And then another piece to this that people might not know about, or it might be a little bit obvious, is that there's a lot of changes in the grant process. And so as far as the SBIR program as a whole, but also mainly individually with these different agencies that you might be applying to or looking to apply to. We've spoken to various experts that are working for these agencies, and they don't even know everything. So that's kind of my disclaimer head first, is that all this information is probably subject to change, but most of the things that we've been talking about have been a part of the SBIR program for the last 40 years as this was developed in the 80s.
You mentioned that this is all about strategy. Part of the reason why Lindsay and I were so interested in talking with you at the MedTech Symposium in Texas was that all of our customers are startup companies and they need funding. So when we reached out to you, it wasn't because we wanted to promote you and make money from you. We don't get anything from BW and Co., and they don't get anything from us. It's just we saw a natural link because your company helps medical device companies get funding, and our company helps them get through the regulatory process so they can commercialize, which is a key part of some of the grants, specifically the SBIR2 grants. They want to see the companies get those grants to commercialization. So I think it's a really great pairing with our companies, and the strategy of getting some guest speakers on here that can help our clients. That was key thing that we wanted to accomplish in 2025. So we're getting an early start here, getting you on board, helping some of our clients early. So thank you. The next question I had, a lot of our medical device clients are outside the US. In fact, it's more than half of them are outside the US. So they're going to be asking, what kinds of grants can they apply for that BW and Co. does? And are they even eligible for some of the grants?
Yeah, well, I'll speak to the SBIR program first. So part of the eligibility requirements of the SBIR program is that you must be considered a small business. So you have to be under 500 employees. You have to be developing some kind of innovative technology. And then you have to be at least 51% owned by a U.S. citizen or a group of those that maybe hold U.S. citizenship, permanent residency, to be eligible to apply. So a lot of foreign companies, mainly probably coming from Europe, who are coming to the U.S., are owned by those that hold citizenship in the EU or potentially the UK, which would not allow them to be eligible for the SBIR program. However, there are probably two really great grants that are a good fit for a lot of different foreign companies, especially in the medical device industry, that we personally work on. And those are the R01 grants and the R21 grants. So the R01 grants are strictly research grants, mainly furthering current research that has been already done. Usually the R01 grants, you get a higher amount when you're awarded for those grants. And the R21 is when there's new research that's being developed. So there's not as much of a budget compared to the R01 grants, but there's still a great opportunity for those foreign companies to kind of make their headway into the US market and then get additional funding through a grant process.
Turned off my microphone to cut some of the background noise.
No worries.
There are a lot of companies that are applying for January because this grant submission deadline for early January, and we get requests. When would those companies start those projects with you? How long ago did they start if they're going to submit in January?
Yeah. I would say it's kind of a layered question because when you look at the solicitations, and I'm just going to speak towards NIH because I feel like a lot of those who are probably going to be watching this live stream are mainly interested in NIH, but there is some overlap to this for the other 11 agencies that partake in this program. But particularly for NIH and for medical device companies, I'm sure we're all aware of, there's a lot of compliance that we need to go through to make sure that these devices can one day be made to the public. And some of these things mean that you need to work with different manufacturers or CROs or universities. And a part of the process for your grants and to be a good candidate to be awarded the grants is that you need letters of support. And with these letters of support, one, it's going to create a stronger case for your project that you're working on and how you're looking to apply for the grant in the specific institute within NIH. And most likely, if you don't have these letters of support, they probably will not award you. And part of their feedback would say that you need to get some kind of letters of support the next time that you're looking to apply. And with these letters of support, they can range in time of when you get it from. And so when speaking to university and an expert there, it might take a month for them to fill out the form, get the sign off and be able to include that in your proposal. But something for a contracting with a CRO, that could take months because you need to get a quote for them. You need to get the letters of intent. There's a lot of different playing parts or moving parts that are going to go through in that process. And so speaking to the January 5th deadline that's coming up, for us personally, BW & Co., we like at a minimum of 3 months to get started on the grant writing process. And that being that most of the companies that are looking to get grants have probably taken the extra steps to get these letters of support. And maybe there's a few things that they need to finalize on. Sometimes they need help to get these letters of support. And in any way we can, we will assist with that. And getting them in contact with the right person and, kind of speeding up the process. But if you're really looking to get the letters of support, depending on who it's from, I would think probably 5 to 6 months earlier, especially if you're going to, need a clinical trial or you're partnering with a manufacturer to develop your product. That takes a little bit longer. And I would think further ahead before you're going to go in and apply to a project or for a R&D grant with the SBIR program. If you already got all that done, 3 months is a substantial amount of time to be able to write your winning grant. Yeah.
Just to clarify, I know your company has a vetting process too. You don't just take anybody that's got cash.
Correct.
You want good clients, so you're not wasting your time, you're not wasting their time.
Yeah.
How much time does that vetting process take? Because if they haven't worked with you yet, and you need 3 months of grant writing and maybe a couple months of going out and getting some additional information to start the grant writing, what's the vetting process going to add to that?
It really depends on the company themselves. A lot of companies who come to us, or maybe we outreach to them, a lot of them have either already submitted for maybe a phase 1 grant and they're looking to pursue a phase 2. So they already are knowledgeable of the process and what it takes. But going into a phase 2, it's a little bit deeper. And so that's why they need some extra assistance, or they had a bad experience with a previous grant writing firm. But there are those companies that are completely new to the process. They have no idea what's going on. They don't know what to do. And so it can range because we need to take a look at their team. And if they don't have a sufficient team or they don't have a certain expert, let's say the company is developing an AI technology to track your breathing methods or whatnot. You need to have an expert on your team that's well versed in AI. You need to have a expert on your team that's well versed in lungs and tracking breathing and whatnot. So that could take a little bit longer, because if they don't have a sufficient team, there's ways that we could potentially step in and help them identify those team members. But at the end of the day, they need to find those team members themselves. And we might let them know, like, hey, you're not ready right now, and be completely authentic with them. They have a great product, but if you want to be a candidate to increase your likelihood of winning, you need to do X, Y, and Z steps to get yourself to that level. Some companies who already have really the organization that's built, they have a great technology, they have the experts that they need. Maybe they've gotten some letters of support, they're already contracting with a manufacturer. Then for us, the vetting process could take maybe up to a week with our team and with our project managers to make sure that they're a good fit for the various grants. And then a week or so to make sure that we identify the best opportunities for them within the 12-month period. So we're not limited to just one opportunity, let's say with the NIH, but we can see overlap with NSF, the DoD, for example. So it can be from a 3-month process, I would say, to put a number on it, if they still need to kind of build up their organization a bit to be a good fit when you're applying for SBIR phase 1 or phase 2, as this is part of your strategy. And it could be as short as a week or a couple days. And also take into account how quickly the company is looking to apply for these grants. If they're ready to go and they're all in for it, then we will do what we can to make sure that we can speed up the process so we can meet those deadlines with that 3-month timeline to be able to write the grant before submission.
You mentioned letters of support. I get requests every year, November, December, for letters of support for the January deadlines. They sometimes have a form already written for me, and they just say, edit however you need to, and then send it back to us. Sometimes they haven't got a clue, and I happen to have one that's already. Does it matter whether I use the form that I download from the grant site, or I can use my own Word document? Do they care?
There's not a specific format that they're looking for. For us, we've developed our own forms to go through that process. There's, when you're going through clinical trials or when you're working with a manufacturer, they're going to provide certain documents for you to fill out, right, in their specific format. And so when you're going to input this information into the grant process, that they're not looking for specific particular format, but they're looking for particular information that's going to be incorporated. So it's good to have, a document that kind of lays out exactly what information you need. So that's something we've developed our own throughout that process, because we've seen this is what's required in the grant. The reviewers are going to be looking for this information, X, Y, and Z. And so as long as you understand in the solicitation exactly what they're looking for, and you can create your own document that mimics that and is very clear, then the institution should accept it. Like I said, it's, I'm not a reviewer, can't speak for them, and things change constantly. But it's really critical that you have that crucial information that they're looking for, and you can have that clear in the document that you might have built yourself.
So the key thing is to get them to send you the grant requirements so you know what to put in the letter or how to tweak your standard letter.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. I'm going to go back to your blog that you posted on Tuesday on our website. You had talked about submitters should get feedback from the grant program officer and ask questions about it before they submit. And I was wondering, how does a submitter go about getting that feedback from a program officer, or even know who it is?
Yeah, so when the various institutions that they publish their solicitation and the specific topics that they're looking to fund for the fiscal year or for that round of submissions, they disclose the contact information for the program officers. So you'll have their name, their email address, contact information, and usually this program officer is well versed in that area of what the topic is. And so all you need to do is send them an email, send them an abstract, and also your key aims of your project. And so that way they have context of what you're looking to speak to them about, have the topic that you're looking to discuss with them as well too. And then most likely they will set up a meeting with you, maybe 30 minutes to an hour, to discuss any questions that you might have. And at this point, what I want to say is this is kind of your way in to get any and all information about not only the institute, the topic, but also the SBIR program. They are responsible, the program officers are responsible for the reviewers. And so they make sure that the reviewers are accurately reading the different proposals and giving them the optimal feedback that each proposal deserves and awarding those accordingly. And so this is your time to get really any and all information. And so they won't interfere with, your proposal and kind of say like to the reviewers, oh, you should award this company versus this one. But it's really great to build those relationships with those program officers, especially if this is not going to be your last time applying for those grants. They want to see those repeat appliers for different programs because who knows, you might go to a phase 2 and you will get the same program officer and they knew you had a really great technology when you applied and won your first phase 1 grant, or even if you're pursuing other grants for different projects that you have in the pipeline. So like I said, this is your opportunity to be in front of decision makers. So as soon as you identify your topic that you're looking to apply to, even if you don't think you have any questions right off the bat, highly recommend send them an email, with your abstract, those key aims that you have for your project, get on their schedule as quickly as you can, because they're pretty much the decision makers. And so the earlier you can do that and ask those questions will set you up for greater success in the future.
Another thing you had in your article was that there are 11 different agencies that participate in the SBIR program. And I've worked with NIH grants, NSF grants, DoD grants, but if there's 11, how do you find these opportunities?
Yeah, there's 11 is a lot to keep up with. And so I would say the best starting point that's really the most simple is go to sbir.gov. This is not only going to have a list of all their different agencies, but you can look at recently released topics that are going to be a part of the SBIR program. And you can kind of filter out to see which agency it's a part of, and what industry as well too. And you can also look up past winners. So if you have a certain project that is maybe in the biotech area and you're looking for a similar biotech company to see if they've been awarded before, you can kind of use this as a part of your strategy to strategically plan. Have they funded a company similar to mine before, but I'm doing X, Y, and Z better than the next person? So sbir.gov is a great place to start. Every institute or agency has their own website. So if you look up Department of Defense, Department of Energy, National Institute of Health, National Science Foundation, they're all going to have their own sites and dedicated pages to the SBIR program. I will say that some agencies have a more simple navigation through their website. One that we love is AFWorks within the Department of Defense. They have a very clean setup that it really just shows what you need to know about the SBIR program and their topics. NIH, for example, they have many, many institutes that partake in this program, so it can be a little bit tedious to go through and find your specific topics. But once you get on their website and you get on their SBIR section, usually from there you can click on individual links that will take you to long form documents. You can read through every documentation there. Something I also wanted to mention as part of this is when you're looking up each different agency and institute, is that not only they abide by the SBIR eligibility rules, but they also have their own requirements. So this is a key time when you get acquainted with their different websites and you find these different topics and solicitations to really dig deep and find out what are their own personal requirements that are outside the SBIR program. So you can get yourself familiarized with their needs, what their budgets look like, and how to set yourself up better when you go to apply. And if you're looking to apply for multiple opportunities, identifying that it's not going to be copy paste for each agency, but you have to find these little nuances.
Sorry to distract you a little bit there. I was trying to pull up the graph that you had in your blog.
Yeah.
I didn't understand all of this, I don't think. You shared it. This is SBIR1 in phase 1 and phase 2 grants. And could you explain a little bit more about the graph and what's important to understand about this?
Yeah. So this graph is specifically for NIH and their funding rates per institute. And this does not include their fast track program or their phase 2B, which is a follow on to phase 2. Fast track is when you do a phase 1 and phase 2 project combined. And then phase 2B, like I said, it's a follow on to phase 2. But I just wanted to keep it kind of clean and simple and direct to kind of show these nuances between different institutes. So if you're looking at this graph here, and you're looking at for example, the NIBIB, it's right kind of in the center. If you look at the blue line for phase 1, the funding rates are fairly low. And so in comparison to maybe the NHGRI, they have a higher funding rate for phase one. So this is a good kind of example of how you use these funding rates to strategize your projects and kind of see, okay, NHGRI has a higher funding rate for phase one, and I really seem like I'm a great fit for that topic. I should go ahead and apply. Even though there might be some overlap with the NIBIB, they have a lower funding rate. Do I want to risk, applying for NIBIB at a lower rate when I know that I'm also matched for a different institute that has a higher award rate? But also in here, how these agencies, going back to NHGRI, they have a higher funding rate than their phase two. So there's probably a higher likelihood that when you apply for phase one, you have a better chance of being awarded versus when you apply for their phase two. There's maybe a higher risk to take because it's not as high as the phase one. And granted, theirs are fairly close in comparison, but these are just some of these like little nuances. Like NCCIH has a relatively low phase one funding rate. It looks like it's about like 10%. But when you look at their phase two, they don't fund anything. And this could be for various reasons, that they didn't have any companies apply. They don't have as high of a budget, so companies don't want to apply, right? So there's all these little identifications that you can make to set yourself up better for success and strategize. Okay, I am a really, really great fit for this topic for NEI for a phase one, but I also see some overlap with NIDA. What should be my better opportunity? Because I know I'm a better fit for this topic, but I have some overlap in this other institute, and they have a higher funding rate. Should I take the chance and apply for a topic that I'm a really, really great fit for, or something that I kind of can finesse and maybe make my way and know that they have a higher funding rate? So should we take that chance, right? So that's kind of what I wanted to represent with this graph. And there's other of these graphs for the different institutes that you can look at kind of year over year, but particularly for medical device companies, I find this really useful to kind of see where I'm at in my current stage with my project of what I'm looking to apply to, and using this to strategize better to increase that chance of being awarded.
In the graph and in the article, you said that about 10 to 20% of the NIH phase one grants are funded, but that's fairly competitive. Are there some other grants that they might consider where they're less competitive, other organizations?
It's a tricky question because we kind of see this number around across all agencies. And when you think about it, these programs, it's money from the federal government. So when you're applying, you're asking for money from the federal government, right? And some of these grants are a substantial amount of money, up to $3 million or as low as maybe $75,000, but still a substantial money to be asking from the federal government. So the SBIR program is made to be competitive. And they want to know, what is that risky technology that's going to come out of the market and drastically change the world, and how can we be a part of that process and further their technology and support our small businesses here in the United States. And that's where you really need to know kind of your ins and outs of the different agencies. For example, the National Science Foundation, they're really looking for that risky technology, something that's never been done before. It's high risk, high reward potentially, versus the NIH. They're also looking for that type of technology, but also furthering research that's already been done before, but it's improving what's currently on the market. And then when you're applying to the Department of Defense, they're looking for that dual use technology. So something that can be optimized within their military, but that can also be commercialized for the public. So the question is, any agency, maybe less competitive? it depends, if you see yourself as a better fit, that you have a technology that is, a better use case within the Department of Defense than something that could be not considered as risky if you're going to apply for the National Science Foundation. But in general, they're made to be competitive. You're requesting money from the federal government at the end of the day.
Are there any grants that just aren't getting enough applicants and you find out about those?
Yeah, there are, I would say mainly within the different institutes and specific topics that they release. Some of these topics don't have as many applicants. And that could be because that institute is not funding as high as, a different institute, for example. And so we see that there's not as much applicants, and so there's a higher funding rate for that versus something that's getting applied to more often. There's a lower funding rate because you have 100 applicants versus 5 applicants, right? And so I would say these kind of change year over year. And so these are the kind of little nuances you need to stay up to date on, which is something that we do because that's part of our heavy lifting there. But definitely within the specific topics, and mainly speaking towards NIH, because they only release specific topics, you have to find what has been awarded and funded the most over the previous years versus what hasn't been, and seeing, is it a better opportunity to apply for something that has a higher awardance rate because there's only 2 applicants, or do I take the risk in getting and applying for something that has a lower funding rate, a higher award, but has 200 applicants, right? So there's definitely these differences within each institute of the NIH. Speaking towards other agencies, I wouldn't say that really applies necessarily. There is some overlap, but definitely within NIH.
We have a lot of clients that come to us and they're hyper focused on, I want to get a 510K, I want to get a 510K. But they don't think about reimbursement. Okay, now you have your 510K. Will anybody pay you any money for it? Not everybody pays cash for their medical devices. They get reimbursed through insurance providers or public health. So you have to worry about reimbursement, have a strategy for it. And they often don't have a well thought out strategy, or their strategy is incorrect. They made some mistakes. We also see companies that don't have a business plan. They don't know how they market their product. They don't know how they're going to distribute it. They're like, well, I'm just going to sell it to a big company. Well, what big company? So what kind of business strategy and business planning should these companies be doing for their grants?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because, and I think I speak to this in my article a little bit, is that when a lot of people who are looking to get grants, with whether it's within the SBIR program, R01s, R21s, different regional, local grants, European grants as well too. But mainly speaking towards the SBIR grants, is that yes, you need to have a really high focus on your science and your technology. You need to have those experts that deeply understand your science and technology. But the second piece is that you need to also have a sufficient amount of knowledge and experts on your team about your business and your business plan. And you need to understand how you're going to commercialize this product. So not only do you need those experts a part of there, but you need to understand your market. Who are your competitors? Right. Are you going to be selling, in the United States? Or are you planning to expand? The NIH in the actual proposal, they lay this really nice and neat for you. So before you go in and apply, and to see if you're ready for it, that you have a great business model and team behind this to execute, you can actually look at to what they're looking for to have in your proposal. So some of the key things, was about 7 points that you need to have included as far as your strategy for your business plan is you need to understand the value of your project. What are your expected outcomes and the impacts that you're going to have when this technology is developed? What is it going to do now, right? Who is the customers that it's going to be addressing? What problems are you going to be addressing after you've commercialized this product? An overview of your company and your team. And so this is a complete overview of your scientists you might have, your chief executive officers, maybe chief marketing officers, anyone that's going to be on your team, and you can show that they're an expert in their field, is what you're going to want to have included as well in your proposal. I touched on this a little bit, but really having a deep understanding of your market and your customers and who's your competition. They're going to want to see that in your proposal. So if you don't have any knowledge on that, then you're going to want to make sure that you do the research. What's your total addressable market? What's your serviceable addressable market? What is your serviceable obtainable market as well too, and be able to understand these different layers that go to who are your customers and what's your competition. And a part of this is being able to address your hurdles. So being able to identify what are your expected hurdles, different things that you're going to have to go through as far as, maybe FDA compliance, maybe getting reimbursements, and what are your unexpected hurdles. So as you're going through this process and even post winning the SBIR award, what are some things that you might not expect that could potentially happen, and then having a plan to address that accordingly. A next piece, which is very important, and I think a lot of people, when they go into the grant process, not that they forget about it, but they think they have to address it a different way, is IP protection. When you're applying for a grant, a lot of companies assume that they need to have their IP, their technology protected immediately before applying for the grant, or they need to show that, yes, it's protected. They can check that box in their proposal. But you don't necessarily need to have your technology IP protected immediately, like as upon submission. But you need to show that you are taking the steps to get your technology protected. They don't want to see that someone's applying for these grants and they haven't taken the steps to protect their technology, that this, could potentially be redone and, manufactured elsewhere. They want to see that you are wanting to protect this and actually do something viable with your technology. So if you've already gotten your device IP protected, it's amazing that that's something you're going to want to include in your proposal. But if you haven't, you need to show that you're actively taking the steps to get there. Another piece of your business plan that you're going to include in your proposal is your finances. And so this includes maybe previous grants that you've won before, your investors that you might have. This could include angel investors, different VC firms that you're working with, the bootstrapping that you might have done. So how you have secured funding and how do you continue to plan on securing funding for your company? Are you looking to pursue another grant if you applied for phase 1? Are you looking to get phase 2? Are you looking, after you've won a phase 1, to start incorporating investors into your technology and who those investors might potentially be? And then creating yourself different milestones that, I won this $300,000 grant. Next year, I hope to have raised $2 million in a Series A round, for example. So you have to be able to communicate this in your proposal. Production and marketing plan needs to be included. So how you're going to produce this, how you're going to market this product or your device to your identified customers, and then your revenue stream. What's your business model? And being able to clearly identify how the company is going to be making money in its various aspects. And so those are the 7 kind of key components that you need to be able to address in your proposal to prove that you have a sufficient business plan and you've strategized this accordingly, incorporating all the science that you've developed. And so you can see there's a lot of weight that there is on both sides that you must have included.
I had another question that came to me that I didn't get the chance to share with you ahead of time, so I apologize for the unfair warning here.
No worries.
The I mean, I usually get requests for letters of support for regulatory for medical device companies because it's an obvious milestone that they have to pass to commercialize. But there are other things that they have to get letters of support for too. And one of the questions that came up do you ever see medical device companies getting letters of support from investors? So, like a promissory note or a letter of intent, I plan to do this investment. If they hit this milestone or if they get funding from NIH, I'll match it. Something like that. Is that ever done?
Yes. Yeah, all the time. And it's a great way to kind of strengthen your case and your proposal. That you do have traction from investors who want to put in $2 million in your product, right? It kind of plays hand in hand that you're able to commercialize it, and what are you taking the steps to get there? And a lot of companies, we all could use additional money, and especially when you're creating a medical device, you need that additional cash flow. So they want to see that you have great partnerships with investors, and also, depending, if it's a VC firm, is this VC funding a lot of medical device companies? It's a great case to add on to your proposal. And so your letters of support can come from anywhere. They can be from different scientists at universities. They can come from your manufacturers. They can come from your investors that you have, and which definitely you want to be able to strategize where you're getting your letters of support from. But I highly would recommend, and we see it occurring as well too with our current clients, that they get their letters of support from their investors.
One of the things, I don't know if you're aware of this, so this is a little bit of my education to you. I see this come around every single time I have a company that's on a grant. At the very last minute, they're like, oh, we need to have a meeting with the FDA so we can show the grant sponsor that we've actually hit our milestone with the FDA, or we're making progress towards it. So it's really important to have that in your plan up front, that during this SBIR1 phase, I'm going to have this kind of meeting with the FDA, and I'm going to start it at this date, because I know it can't happen overnight. It's not enough to say I submitted a request for a meeting. You actually want to have a meeting and have that document included. So I have all these companies like, can we please get it a few weeks earlier? December 1st is not the time to submit for January. It takes the FDA 75 days minimum to get you a response to your questions. So if you want to include it in January, you should be asking in like September.
Yeah.
So that's part of that planning thing. Put business plan up front so you can get that letter from the FDA. Then they actually give you a letter to all your questions. It'd be nice to have some of those questions answered, like the regulatory pathway. Yes, it's a class 2. Yes, it's a 510K. No, you don't need a clinical study. That changes things a lot in having that letter from the FDA, that it shows the grant sponsor that, yes, they've done what they said they were going to do, and they've taken steps towards commercialization. They didn't wait till the last minute and then do it as an afterthought.
Yeah. And this is all about the forward thinking, right? Being able to plan, that the January 5th deadline is coming up, or maybe you're looking to apply April 5th, which is the next round for NIH. So are you thinking now to get all these steps done to set yourself up when you're going to click submit on January 5th or April 5th? And the key thing too is you need to prove to the reviewers in the institutes that you're taking the necessary steps to make that happen. There's definitely a heavier emphasis when you're going into phase 2 and you're looking to potentially do clinical trials. And at what stage, if you're involving animals for your clinical trials, you need to include all the different documentation in there on how you're going to be protecting these animals during your clinical trials, right? So, and if you're not sure where to start, you need to be forward thinking 6 months before you apply, that you get that documentation that you need to show that you have, an accurate representative of the population, and that you have a substantial sample size, and all the other things that come included in that. And then in your proposal, you can effectively write down the steps that you're going to take to make that happen, and that document that's included.
One of the other things that I've suggested to companies, because initially I didn't even know it was something that was done, but then once I did it and I saw the impact, I was like, oh, I got to tell companies to do this. When you get an SBIR1 grant, let's say NIH, and you have a meeting with the FDA, invite your sponsor, whoever your contact is at the NIH, invite them to the meeting. They don't have to come. They're not necessarily going to say anything during the meeting, but it gives you two things. Number one, it's a little reminder like, hey, us over here, we're actually talking to the FDA. We're doing what we said we were going to do. Number two, the FDA treats them differently. Maybe it's subconscious, but there's a night and day difference between the FDA when they have NIH on the call and not on the call.
Yeah.
It's sort of like having your boss looking over your shoulder. It's not their boss, but they give a lot more respect, and I tend to see a few more heads at the meeting when NIH is there too. So, and sometimes there's even an FDA contact that's supposed to be present in the meeting, so try to invite them too. So that's a key thing is if you're doing an SBIR1 and you're going for the SBIR2, invite your sponsor, invite an FDA contact if there is one to the meeting, and you'll be surprised at how much it will help your meeting. Another thing that I was thinking of, you mentioned the animal studies. Animal studies in general, if you don't need to do an animal study, don't do an animal study.
Right.
But certain things we have to do animal studies to prove safety before we can do a human clinical study. And we want to do as few animals as possible, but they cost a lot of money. They might cost $10,000, $20,000 per animal because you have pathology and other types of tests that you have to do. So in these studies, you may not have the money in phase 1 to do the study and start it and purchase those animals and schedule it. But what you probably do have the money to do is to select a lab to work with. And that's one of the things we do is recommend labs that we've actually audited and we think very highly of. Because they treat the animals humanely and take really good care of them. They don't have sick animals involved in their studies. So we can recommend labs to work with. They'll write the protocol for the company and get it through the IACO committee. And you can do all that with spending a little bit of money that might be in your SBIR1 bucket of money. And then once you've gotten through your SBIR2 funding, now you can actually start that start that animal study. So you don't have to do all the work in phase 2. You can do a little bit of work, the protocol writing, and get the FDA's feedback and things like that with very little money. So that's some of that planning that takes time but doesn't cost a lot of money. So that's a great thing to include in your phase 1. We're almost out of time here, so we have more questions, but so we can let Alexina go, and so I can get on to my next call. Please make sure you share the link to this video to anybody that might be interested in applying for a grant. If you're a medical device company that's doing design and development, or you know somebody who is, they could probably use some money that's non-diluting. So show this video with them. You can find Alexina's contact information in the blog. So it's at medicaldeviceacademy.com/blog if you're looking at it now. If you're looking at it in the future, the slug at the end is grant/writing. So you can just type in search grant writing, or if you're looking at it this week, it's the first blog at the top of the feed. So definitely take a look at that. The title of the blog is going to be Grant Writing, 5 Common Mistakes by Medical Device Companies. I'm also going to include links in the blog, links to her blog and her contact information in the video description. So I'll go back and I'll edit, and that's going to be on our YouTube channel. I'll also ask our social media marketing person to go in there and add some information in our LinkedIn profile and our Facebook. So you'll have it in multiple places, but I'll do it in the YouTube channel. And please make sure you post your questions and comments for this video, and whatever platform it is. I know I'm way behind in answering questions, so I will go in there this week and answer questions and get caught up. But please put your questions in there for Alexina. I'll pass them along to her. She could respond directly in there, or maybe we'll have her back next year in March for another live streaming video where you can ask more questions, and maybe slightly different topic than the 5 mistakes, but maybe something else that people are really interested in that's related to grant writing. So thank you for joining us, Alexina, and thank you to our audience for watching. Please let me know if you have any questions or have trouble getting a hold of Alexina, but we really appreciate you joining us today. And thank you for watching and sharing.
Yes, thank you guys.
Bye-bye.